Hi, I'm Jim Heilbronner, President of Architectural Dimensions. We're in Oakland, so we're happy to be here, and our background is 30 years. We've been doing a lot of retail, hospitality, hotels, and a good amount of historic renovation. We did the Fox Theater in Oakland as a recognizable place, and we're managing the Oakland Army Base redevelopment project for the last 6 years, so we finally started, if that gives you a clue as to where we're headed agency-wise in the world. So there's some slides here, and I'll introduce people, but just to start off, you want to... so I looked up SoMa, because I didn't know what a SoMa is, and so it gave me all these different, the SoMa drug, and some of these things look pretty good. So I finally went to the next, I finally went to Wikipedia, of course, next, and it gave me the definition that it's a relatively large neighborhood. So that's all we need to know. And so before, which way are we headed here? Okay, so we wanted Matt to, I think we want to start with Matt, but let's go through intros first and start with Patrick and introduce, each person introduce themselves. Their resume is better coming from them than me, but quick intro on everybody.
My name is Patrick Kennedy. I'm a residential developer. I've done 20 years developing in Berkeley and came over to San Francisco 3 years ago, and I'm building a high-rise micro apartment project right now at 9th and Mission, which happens to have 3,214 square feet available on the ground floor for retail.
Very
Okay.
good.
Is that it?
That's it, we're done.
I'm Matt Alexander. I'm the managing principal of SRS Retail Partners here in San Francisco. SRS is a national brokerage retail firm. We have 20 offices across the country. We also have offices in Hong Kong and Toronto. And here in the Bay Area, we have offices in San Francisco, San Jose, and Walnut Creek.
I'm Matt Field with TMG Partners. We're an opportunistic investor only in the Bay Area. I'm the chief investment officer for the company. And we've done almost 20 projects in SoMa.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Maria Yurdi. I am the executive director of the Trans-Bay Joint Powers Authority, and we're building the Trans-Bay Transit Center that you saw in the video earlier today.
Do you have permits?
We have all our permits.
I'm just checking. Okay, so let's get going here. Is there any more slides? Do you need the slides of the to reference to anything forward of that? Okay.
Talking about market.
Before I forget, because people leave, I just wanted, everybody's invited to my party, and I just bought this $2 million apartment. So it's here in SoMa.
It's a studio?
We won't be able to fit any refreshments in though, so I'll send you an invitation. So let's get started, and I'll prompt some things. Some statistics I think I had up on the wall. Some stats. San Francisco population by 2032, 1 million people. Read different articles. We're at 8. It's 845 now-ish. 1.1 by 2040. That's the things I'm reading in the news. It's kind of interesting. Density of San Francisco, 17,000 people per square mile. Compared to others, compared to Oakland, which is about 7,000 people per square mile. Fascinating facts for architects: 1,000 miles of sewer system in San Francisco, which relates a little bit to what I'll ask later about infrastructure. And a fascinating statistic: the smallest or lowest percentage of people under 18 years old, which relates a lot to the housing types and retail particularly. So. And probably food too. So some interesting stats about the city that tie into where things are going as a city. I don't have the stats on SoMa per se, but a lot of neighborhood development within a big neighborhood, and so we'll go from there. So the first question is, it's a funny question, but what is SoMa? What, in everyone's perspective from their business models, Patrick's and everyone, how do you see SoMa as a neighborhood and community growing from here?
Well, I thought about that question. We talked a little bit earlier, Jim, and I was reminded of a quote that was made by an architect named Rem Koolhaas about 15 years ago when he was trying to get a building approved for Prada. Any of you guys remember that? The cheese grater building? He got shut down The project never proceeded. But there was an article in the Chronicle in which he made the following observation, and that is, the genius of American urbanism is that it can accommodate variety without endangering its wholeness. And in San Francisco, it's obvious that an incredible cultural permutation is being elaborated. Now, that strikes me as exactly describing what's happening in SoMa now, because we're seeing housing compete with high-rises, compete with pot clubs, compete with high-end retailers, and it's a mishmash and kind of an anarchic situation whose final form, I think, has yet to be seen. And I think that's what makes it such a fascinating place.
Okay. Well, Matt, what's your, from a retailer eyeball?
So 15 years ago, when I moved down to Howard and Beale in my office, in our offices, SoMa, or South of Market, was Market Street. It was down to King in the south. It was over to Van Ness, and then it was to the Embarcadero. And I think it's really evolved now in 15 years into distinct little neighborhoods. You know, you have the Costco, the retail project out there, Bed Bath, Trader Joe's, and then now you have evolving at 10th and Van Ness, you have Emerald Fund building the California State Automobile Association former building into residential. You have the Honda dealership going to be renovated into towers, and then maybe even the Goodwill. Then you come down Market Street, and we have Mid-Market now. We're involved with a project. We're leasing a project, 250,000 square foot project, Market Street Place. In fact, we start construction in September. This has been a project that's been on the work for 8 years, and we've decided to go ahead and start construction this September with delivery to retail tenants in September of 2016. And then you come down the street, you come down further east, and we have the Transbay Terminal, Transbay Transportation, which is not just the 12 acres, but is kind of evolved into, Maria's going to correct me, but 15 or 20 acres of residential and office around it. And then we have the Rincon area, and the Rincon, and we have several projects, residential projects going on there. So, and then you still have the ballpark, and you know, what happens if Lucas decides to go to the seawall project? I mean, that's gonna create a whole nother area. So I think that what we're seeing is we're seeing SoMa split up into distinct little neighborhoods or little areas.
So Matt, what do you see as, I'm gonna say demographics, we were talking about under 18 renters, where are people at today? What's going on as?
Well, the areas that I'm talking about, and I think especially south of Market, you know, there is some affordable housing, but most of that housing is for people that are working here. And what's scary is there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, I think it was last week, that said that 8% of the office users right now are tech. Well, as soon as Maria's project and Salesforce and these other, I mean, that number is going to jump up. Mm-hmm. And those people have to live somewhere. And right now, the only place to live, the only areas to move into or to build are south of Market and Mission Bay. And then if something ever happens at you know, Candlestick or that whole area.
Maria, do you have data on that, on the housing side, the mixture of office versus other workers?
Well, certainly the Transbay Transit Center project has spurred a tremendous amount of development in this entire area, not just in the former Transbay redevelopment zone, the Transbay Transit Center district area, and just the broader SoMa. Our project alone, because of our project, we're building over 4,500 new residential units. Within our project area, 35% has to be affordable by state law. But tremendous amount of residential units are being built, as well as office. As you know, the Salesforce Tower will be all office. 181 Fremont connecting to our station is also office. We have another property that we'll be putting out to bid at some point that'll be mixed use, and then residential, the site of our former or our current temporary terminal that will then be our former temporary terminal will also have housing as well. So tremendous amount of housing and office space, retail, even hotel potentially as a result of Transbay.
Matt, what's your take on it from a housing developer standpoint?
Well, I think the market's clearly evolving. And I think we sort of have barbell effect happening. We have affordable housing, which is the 35%, and we tend to have more luxury housing. And I think the challenge the city faces at the moment is sort of more workforce housing. The challenge as a developer, and I'm sure Patrick would echo this, is that construction costs, particularly if you're building high-rise, it almost by definition you're building luxury housing. I mean, you can define it however you want to define it, but the cost to build the product are extremely high. In particular, we're also moving into a part of the city where the subsurface conditions are poor, so we have very high subsurface costs. If you look at anything built around Trans Bay, we're doing a project down there, and you're going 250 feet to bedrock. If you're building in Mission Bay, you're probably going down close to as far as you're going up. So there are just some inherent challenges where we're evolving, and I think the challenge the city really faces is how do we solve not affordable, but the next leg up. 120% of AMI to 250% AMI, 220% of AMI to help keep the middle class from getting hollowed out. But we need to build. I mean, I think that, having had an election last night, I would say, there's sort of two ways you solve a problem like this. You either introduce more supply into the system to try to get prices down. There is another thesis that if we make the city inhospitable for growth, we will reduce demand and therefore push prices down. And I think those are the two ends of the spectrum, unfortunately, at the moment. I'll ask a provocative question. How many people in this room, and be honest, voted last night? Okay, that sucks. You have to get out and vote, okay? It's not a joke. I mean, we have a right in this country, and that is a ridiculous, this is an educated group of people. You gotta get out and vote, okay? There's a lot of decisions being made about the future of where we live, and you gotta get involved. I don't mean to get on a soapbox, but we can't have that participation level and have a functional government.
There's bad news and good news. The bad news is we have an incredible housing shortage, but the good news is it's largely self-inflicted, and it could be changed. If any of you saw that article in TechCrunch a while ago about the nesting owls in San Francisco.
Read this article. It's an amazing article. Google it.
It was by a local writer, but he talked about it was a broad look at our housing problems, and it had a map that showed about 95% of San Francisco is zoned for 40 feet. And if we simply move that to 55, we could alleviate the housing problem in the space of about 5 years, especially if we enlisted the help of the Irish builders in town, because they could build all over the city. And right now, housing development seems to be focused on a few parcels here in South of Market that are epic battles requiring massive amounts of money, and there's no way we're ever going to address our housing problem unless many more people are enlisted on it in many more sites throughout the city. But the political will is not there, and it's uncertain when that will change.
You got to get out and vote. I mean, that is really, it's just that simple, people. I mean, get out and vote. You will make a difference. There are too few people voting, and we are not going to solve this problem without some real change. And it goes to exactly what Patrick's talking about. That article is great. There's an article about what the sort of 10 ingredients for what makes San Francisco's housing expensive, and it is a great read. The guy who researched it did an amazing job. I don't agree with 100% of it, but it is an amazing read.
So closing out, any closing comments other than Matt's willing to pay more for architecture? So if that's a good thing.
Well, from Trans Bay's perspective, the one closing comment I said is kind of following on what Matt says about getting out to vote. I think it's important to get out and really push to get phase 2 brought into the station, and that's Caltrain. We got to get that funded. It was a Herculean effort to raise close to $3 billion that we did raise for phase 1. We're going to need another $2 billion or so for phase 2, and it's going to take all of us, and it's going to take all the developers in the SoMa area and in the Trans Bay area. It's going to take you, Matt, getting out there and pushing for it, pushing the local elected officials and at the statewide level and federal level as well to get that train into Trans Bay. There's just such little funding at a nationwide level, and there's such a great need. And we're going to need the private sector's involvement. We really are, if we're going to get the trains into Trans Bay. It's not just going to be the government. So that's really my push.
Matt? You good? Everything's leased up? Okay. Patrick?
Actually, Market Street's already leased up. Yeah, we're starting construction.
We're
Yeah,
done.
We're
Okay.
done.
That's a good way to end. So thank you, everyone. Mike, if you want to do any closing.
That was an amazing panel. So let's give these guys a great round of applause. Really. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.